Hello there, adventurers, friends, and game masters. I'm the Dungeon Coach, creator of DC20, and I'm here to share with you the brand new Ancestry system of how Ancestries, your character's race, is going to be handled in DC20. I think you're going to love it. It's basically a system where each race has a certain number of Ancestry points that they're able to spend on their character. You start off with a default 5 points that you get for your Ancestry. That is the default package that you get, but you can swap them out for some expanded traits and switch them out as long as you still have that total of 5. There's also flavorful traits that are worth 0 points, but it gives a lot of flavor to that specific Ancestry. And there's also negative traits that add a negative trait if you want to take it onto your character at a negative cost, but that actually gives you another point to spend elsewhere. Because the problem with races in D&D is all of their features are the same. So if everyone in the party is all of the exact same Dragonborn, even if they come from different places, different lands, different kingdoms, whatever, they're the exact same. Now with Tasha's, they added the ability to be able to take those points and put them in different places. So instead of charisma, you can switch it to strength or whatever. But still, some of these racial features are completely useless if you pick certain classes or are super optimal for other classes. And a side note issue of D&D races is they give away dark vision like it's candy, and just everyone has dark vision, making it not as unique. And also Dragonborn don't have dark vision, which is crazy. But anyway, stay focused. In this video, we're going to talk about the DC20 Ancestry system, possibly ways that you can inspire your D&D Ancestry system and be able to kind of tweak and change some stuff there with a little bit of work that I've already done for DC20. So let's break it down. Time out. If you don't know what DC20 is a brand new tabletop roleplay game I just released about 2-3 months ago. It's in its alpha stages right now, and I just released the Ancestry expansion update to the game, which it brings 10 different Ancestries with probably about 10 more to come. So if any of this Ancestry stuff sounds interesting, then probably other parts of the game will be interesting to you as well. You can check out all the other videos I've posted already here on YouTube, or if you really want to pick up the game for yourself and support its development as we lead towards its eventual release in a Kickstarter, link for that's down in the description. All right, so the first concept to share with you guys is the default Ancestry traits. All 10 Ancestries and all future Ancestries will have a pre-made for you, so you don't have to do it yourself. This is a pre-selected amount of traits, and it's a total of 5 Ancestry points worth of traits. That's another thing here, is that all Ancestry points have a weight value associated with them. So a 1-point trait, 2-point trait, and even a 3-point trait. Side note is this really balances all the Ancestries across the board, and if every Ancestry has 5 points, then they are all balanced. Now what this might look like depending on each Ancestry is some Ancestries might grant 5 1-point traits. That's a possibility. Or they could grant 2 2-point traits and 1 5-point trait, total of 5, 2, 4, 5, done. Now, one of the big concepts here with these default traits is every single default trait will be useful in some capacity for all classes. So you will not be seeing something about like, oh, extra bonuses to grappling or extra mana or something like that. In DC20, that's a mana point system instead of spell slots. But you're not going to get mana as part of a default Ancestry because maybe you are a monk and you don't use mana. So that trait would be useless for you, so that means it's not going to be in the default section of traits. Now that doesn't mean that they won't get it, but I will talk about expanded traits here in a second. Another goal here with these default traits is to let this Ancestry be iconic and get the flavor and the feel of this Ancestry across. In fact, let's jump into our first example of the DC20 Elf. So here are the default traits for the Elf. You get Elven Will at having advantage on checks and saves against being charmed or put to sleep. That might seem familiar from other versions of Elves, but the DC20 Elf and the lore of DC20 is going to be an entirely separate thing, and the reason why they have some of these benefits are entirely different for the lore reasons, but that's for a later video. They also get a trait called Nimble, is whenever you take the dodge action, which is normally 1 action point to take it, you gain the benefits of the full dodge action, which is normally 2 action points to take. This represents them being more agile and nimble, being able to dodge attacks. And that agility applied towards nature that they are in, it lets them be able to ignore difficult terrain, which is what Agile Explorer gives them. That's what I'm saying. This is your default Elf. All of those traits will be beneficial in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, if you're fighting some charming and sleeping creatures, very beneficial, but at least every class will benefit from it. And now, if you didn't notice already, there is a 0-point trait. Every single Ancestry gets a 0-point trait. So here's what this is. This is purely flavorful and usually just not powerful enough to be worth 1 point whatsoever. And also usually roleplay focused or exploration focused, having to do things not necessarily in combat. In some cases, it might be applied to combat, or if that's just the overall feel of the Ancestry that we're going for here, these 0-pointers are pretty cool. But that's not all. Those are the default traits that every single Elf. So if you have a brand new player that has never played DC20 before, never played tabletop roleplay games before, I wanted to create and customize a default set of traits. So some players like, I want to be an Elf Ranger. Done. You know exactly what to do. But if you have a veteran player that says, I want to be an Elf Ranger, But let's talk about expanded traits. Expanded traits are also an amount of traits that every single ancestry have that are unique to every ancestry. These also have point values associated with them, just like the default traits do, and you can swap them out at character creation. You have a certain vision for your character. You have a certain type of elf you want to play, whether it be for tactical reasons and you want some sort of mechanical value to be able to have, or if it's roleplay reasons and you came and you grew up in this other part, that you grew up in the trees, so you should have a climbing speed. So here's what that looks like now. This is the full picture of the elf. These are all the traits for the elf in the current iteration of the Alpha 0.5 right now. But you have your 5 total points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for your default traits. And you have your flavorful 0 pointer. But then you have all of these traits down here that you can switch out points for. So if you feel like you're from the canopy, you grew up in the trees. So yeah, you feel like difficult terrain, that should be a thing. Yeah. You do like nimble and dodging and stuff like that. You feel like you're like a wood elf is what you're going for. You really want to build a wood elf. So you really don't care so much about advantage on charmed and sleep. That doesn't really make sense for your elf, and you really want to get across your elf, whether it be combat reasons or roleplay reasons, and you're going to pick up climb speed. Yes, for 1 point right here, you gain a climb speed equal to your move speed. Done. Look at that elf. Or maybe you want to dive into nature and create things from nature, and you want to do a trade that involves making things from nature, like leatherworking or something, and then you want to be able to know a lot about plants. Well, you can swap out 2 points from nimble, lose the nimble trait, and pick up plant knowledge and trade expertise. Look at that. And for you observant people that are paying attention right here, you might notice at the bottom there are negative traits. Yes, that is right. There are negative traits associated in DC20. These negative traits are optional. Most of the negative traits in the game are optional. In fact, let's jump over to the gnome real quick, and you can see there is a default trait that is a negative default trait that is not optional because you are a gnome. Your size is considered small. So that is a trait that's the only type of traits that will be forced on you because you're not gonna have a medium-sized gnome. But in general, these negative traits are options that you can choose, because if you look at gnomes at the bottom here, you can choose to have agility attribute decrease your agility attribute by 1. And if you really want to get across the small, tiny, short, skittery feel of a gnome, then you can have short-legged as a negative trait, and your speed decreases by 1. The default speed in DC20 is 4, which now would bring you to a 3, which is, oh no, I don't know. I would not want to force something like that onto a player. And now, I really want to play a gnome, but I don't want to be that strong. But that is why these are optional negative traits. Now, whenever you do take on this negative trait, you have to have a total of 5. So if you have a total of 5 and you take on a -2, oof, that -2, now I have -1 speed. But now look, I have 2 more points I can now spend to pick up this and pick up that for a total of 5. Lore timeout. I've been blown away by how interested you guys are in the lore of DC20. And trust me, there is a ton of it. I just didn't think people would be that interested in it. I thought people were just going to want the mechanics and the rules and play the game. But there's a unique opportunity I have here with DC20 and its launch and creation to be able to take ancestries and like different characters, races, and where they come from and what different reasons, why they have magical traits and what uniqueness, what makes them unique and magical in their own way. How are humans unique and magical in this big fantasy setting, but not too weird because they are just humans? I have a whole bunch of lore stuff ready to reveal all this guy's stuff to you guys. I talk about some of this stuff in live streams every Tuesday, 8:30 Central Standard Time. So the more love these type of videos get, where I'm talking about the Ancestries, which does really connect to the lore of the game, and comments down below that you guys want to see the lore, I'm gonna have to make a lore video. Anyways, now let's mix it up with some Ancestries. See what I did there? We're talking about mixed ancestries. What if you have parents that come from different ancestries? What if you want to make a half-elf, which is human and elf? That's the most basic iteration, and it might blow your mind here in a second, so stay with me. If you wanted to make a half-elf in DC20, that's very easy to do. Here's how it works. To create a mixed ancestry, you pick 2 ancestries. One that came from your mom and dad, whatever. You're going to take those 2. You now have access to both pools of all of the traits associated with both of those ancestries. The default traits for each, the expanded traits for each. You now have a buffet table in front of you to be able to look back and forth between and what kind of half-elf am I? What traits do I want from one or the other? And that is purely customizable. You could literally say you're a half-elf and then choose all of the elf traits and then sure, done. Or maybe you pick 4 points from the elf and only 1 from the human. It's whatever you want. The only real rules that kick in is you can only get 1 0-point trait. So if you do pick between 2, each ancestry will have a 0-point trait, and you just pick whichever one expresses your character the most. And if both ancestries do have a similar feature, you can't take it twice. Features of the same name you can't take twice. And other than that, negative ancestry traits, you can take negatives from the humans, negatives from the elves. As long as you have a total of 5 points and only 1 0-pointer, you're good. Oh, and there is one more thing, but I'm going to have some cool examples here. What if you wanted to make a half orc, but instead of the other half being human and just having a preset, this is a half orc, what if you could take the orc ancestry and the dwarf ancestry and combine those two? A shorter and stockier orc looking character with big old tusks. Or instead of an Aasimar from D&D being just an angel person, which is pretty much just a human with a little bit of angel sprinkled in, you could do an Angelborn, which is what DC20's angel race is called right now. Take the Angelborn and combine it with a gnome. You'll have a holy little gnome, short little gnome, silver skin, however you want to describe this mix between these two is up to you. Now for that unique rule is if you did do an Angelborn gnome, gnomes have a default negative trait of small, but if you didn't want to choose that because you chose Angelborn and gnome, and Angelborn aren't small, you could choose to not be small. Lean into the Angelborn side of things a little bit, and then you can pick your points between just as normal. But the only exception is if both ancestries share the exact same default negative trait, which in this case, the only instance of this is gnomes and halflings. If you were to pick a mixed ancestry between a gnome and a halfling, both of them have the negative default trait of small. So you would have to create a character that is a default -1 trait of small, and then you can pick and choose 6 total points between the two of them to get your total of 5, which is 6 minus 1 gets you the 5. So big picture, as you can see, there's not a lot of restrictions, and there's a ton of possibilities that my mind's been blown with my own system here of what you could do. What if you made a tiefling, which in this case is a fiendborn, and a dragonborn, and combined a devilish dragon? Is it a scaly tiefling or is it a dark looking dragonborn? What 2 ancestries would you combine down below? Let me know. Oh, and there's also another thing of a variant rule, which lets you be able to take all ancestors, take a big step back, and you can make a custom ancestry. In D&D, you're left alone to have to homebrew your own ancestry and have to be like, okay, so I'm gonna make, and it's probably gonna be broken or underpowered, overpowered. Your dungeon master might not even agree with it. Oh no. But in DC20, the variant rule for a custom ancestry is you can take a step back, come up with your own visual of what this thing looks like, look at every single ancestry point in the game. In this case, you only get 4 points because you are being able to choose anything in the game. You pick 4 points, 1 0-point trait, and you can create your own ancestry. Very simply and all within the rules. And you could also, if your dungeon master wants to, and everybody wants to just go for it, you could also have a 5th point and make it maybe like, okay, 5 points, you can get anything you want. But that would be very strong and obviously up to your game master's discretion. There you go. Let me know what you think. And if you want to know more about DC20, check out the live streams every Tuesday, 8:30 Central Standard Time. Check out more videos I have here on this channel about it. And you can just support everything by picking up the PDF for yourself or joining Patreon. Thank you guys so much. And there is so much more coming and so much more thinking outside the box. Peace.